on. Hello. Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. I'm Alex Whiteley, and today I'm coming to you from a cellar at the bottom of the top of the cop, and we're at Wrekin Whiskies with Mike Hale.
Hello.
How are you? You all right?
Yes. Yeah.
This interview is about 3.5, maybe 4 years in the making, because I remember before the biscuit even began, I spent a couple of days, I always say canvassing the town, just and giving out my business cards. I'm doing this thing, can we do some interviews? And we started off to a good start, almost too good a start, because I didn't think I thought I'd get like 2 or 3 people, and loads of people came to me. We got such a huge bank of interviews at the very beginning. I was so grateful that I got overloaded. So this never happened for some reason. So
you got busy, I got busy.
The world got busy, yeah. So I've been dying to come here though, because this is such a niche shop. And I'm very interested in niches when it comes to like businesses and things, because it's either really, really difficult or really, really easy to move a niche, right?
Well, the part of the world that I grew up in, which is the Highlands, it's not niche. You trip over whiskey shops. You turn around a corner and there's another one there. But yeah, for down here it is a bit.
Yeah. So obviously you're Scottish?
No. Just grew up there.
Just grew up there, okay.
Yeah. So I was born in the West Country.
Oh, okay.
And then one day when I was about 7 years old, my parents came home and said, we're moving up north. So being down near Plymouth, we thought, where? Exeter? Bristol?
Go to Wales?
Inverness.
Inverness, wow.
So all the way, all my family are still up there, so it's very much home. But sadly I wasn't born up there. So I'm what they call a plastic jock.
Plastic jock. I like that.
Yeah.
Similar, not similar at all. I moved just over the border to North Wales from here, and an English kid growing up in Wales. It's one of those things that you glaze over. You go, oh yeah, whatever. But it was actually really difficult for an English kid like me growing up in Wales, because they were like, the Welsh and Scottish feel about the English. What was it like that for you?
Yes, very much.
Yeah,
very much. But also it was. I mean, Inverness has got a reputation for really good spoken English, but still, when you're dropped in the midst of a bunch of people who speak with an accent you've never heard before, I had to get everybody to say something twice to me as a kid before I could understand what they were saying. But
yeah. Mine was Wrexham, so they kind of sound Scouse anyway. And I grew up there long enough to be able to say that. So shh. So you grew up in Inverness.
Yep.
Surrounded by. Was whiskey from a young age sort of around you?
Well, I always tell the story that on my 18th birthday, what am I? I was 54 this week, so 36 years I've been drinking whiskey. And that was because on the day of my 18th birthday, I went down the pub with my father. He said, what do you want to drink? I said, I'll have a beer. Beer arrived with a whiskey chaser. I said I didn't want a whiskey chaser. He said, oh son, the whiskey's not the chaser. And then if I'm honest, for about 6 years after that, I was probably drinking whiskey out of bravado. How's your whiskey, son? Oh, it's fantastic. No, it's not. And then one day you find one that you like, and over the years you grow into it, or it grows into you. But
yeah, I mean, I'm Irish. My family live they're in Bantry Bay in Cork. And I used to go, obviously for years. I've been going over to see them. Not been for a while. COVID. But it's always nice to sit down with my dad and have a whiskey. It's one of those rituals that you have. And obviously he's like, we like the Bushmills and the Jamiesons here because we're whiskey with an E in the name.
With an E
in the name. What do you know the story behind that?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah,
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why does whiskey have an E in it?
All right. So it goes back to the 1800s, and Scottish whiskey was not particularly fantastic back then.
No.
A lot of
use it to grease engines and stuff.
strip the grease off engines.
Yeah.
But and the Irish whiskey industry was selling a lot of whiskey into the US. And they wanted to differentiate their product. That's why they put the E in, and that's why American whiskey has the E in. They're the only 2 countries in the world, to my knowledge, I may be wrong, that use the E. Everybody else uses it without an E. Now, the Scots, of course, famously got their act together, and now they've pretty much got the market cornered for whiskey. Whiskey's made all over the world.
Yeah,
wonderful
of course, yeah.
whiskies, but But, usually when people think about whiskey, it's Scotch whiskey.
I've had a great insight because obviously my family's Irish, Scotch is everywhere,
Yeah.
and my wife from Colombia as well, and they have their own brands in Colombia of whiskey. So I got to, and we went to a party, and they literally bought bottles of whiskey for the whole party. They literally fitted it out with as much drink as you can muster. In fact, there were bottles left over, and I was drinking all these Colombian whiskies. It's very nice. It's very good to try these.
All of them are nice after about the second or third.
What was your? Because I've read the website, and there's by the way, guys, if you've never been on the Wrekin Whiskies website, go and have a read of.
Well, don't at the moment because it's in the middle of being rebuilt. But
who's rebuilding that for you? Who's doing that?
Oh, it's just a guy that well, it's me that's doing most of the rebuild. We've had it moved, and I've just got to repopulate it out.
Very talented.
So I was putting something on there yesterday, saying, just give us a break for a few weeks.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. But there's this nice story there though about you and your history. You had a grown-up job.
Yeah, I did. I had a very grown-up job.
What was that?
Well, at the time, I worked for Hewlett-Packard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
explains the web building then. Yeah, you're good with computers.
Yeah, I was doing project management and all sorts of systems.
I write a good spreadsheet. I really do.
Oh, I can. Do you know what? Actually, we used to joke about it because originally I joined EDS, which had a huge presence over towards Telford. And they were a big Texan company, EDS, and electronic data systems. We all used to joke, Excel-driven solutions, because everything in that company was on a spreadsheet. Everything, access databases, no, spreadsheet. But no, that's what I was doing, and I got a bit bored of corporate America.
Yeah, don't blame you, to be honest. What was that like? Was it a samey kind of job? Was it just, what was it about it that was boring? It was just
if I'm honest, I was getting frustrated because I'd been in the same group for about 8 years, and I knew where all the bodies were buried, as I say. But when you're in there, and I was surrounded by some extraordinarily talented people, but it just always felt like we were reinventing the wheel a little bit. And over the period of a couple of years, I came to realise that I wasn't really happy.
Do you know what? It's really important to have that journey in life.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a fantastic job, fantastic salary, car allowances, all flying all over the world, all these things. But deep down, at your core, you need to be happy, and I really wasn't. So, a change was in order.
Yeah. These are the reasons I love doing these stories and speaking to people about their journey, because not everybody gets the opportunity to go, I'm not happy, I'm going to do this instead. Yeah. Because some people do have to live in it. I'm starting to find out now that speaking behind a microphone is what I'm kind of good at. Now I want to be able to be paid to do this, and there's not a lot of opportunity to earn a living doing this. So it's kind of frustrating, really. But maybe something will open up in the future. I don't know. So you went from this job that you were kind of like, whatever, to you wanted to do something to make your own, I guess?
Well, it was the second time I've done a career left turn, because before that I spent 15 years in the Royal Air Force.
Oh, okay.
And came out of the Royal Air Force because, I'd fallen into IT, got a bunch of IT qualifications, and it was that, what do I do? Okay, well, I'll make that leap to civilian life and use those qualifications. So making that career left turn, doing something completely different. 1 minute you're hitting an aeroplane with a large hammer trying to make it work, and the next career you're just sitting there in front of a spreadsheet or whatever. It was time for that change, and I think one of the things that wasn't great, and of course we've seen in the last maybe 18 months a lot of focus on people working from home. Yes. And the challenges in that. I did that for the best part of most of my career, to be honest. And there's huge.
We didn't have Skype or Zoom.
Well, we had Skype, but there's no Zoom. Zoom. We did play around with video calls, and they used to irritate me. So I'd always run into my son's bedroom and grab a cuddly toy and put it in front of the camera.
I was watching an episode of House. Weirdly, from like 2007, 2008, and he's trying to solve this mystery of this woman that's ill in the South Pole, and they're doing this video call, and she looks perfect in HD, and I was kind of like, yeah, right, come on, get out of it. Back then.
But no, I mean, part of the fuel for doing this was I wanted to talk to people. not over the telephone, because I was doing an awful lot of that.
Yeah.
Because the team that I was part of, we were scattered all over the world, so it was impractical to get everybody together. So, what better way to talk to lots of people every day than to be a shop in Shrewsbury?
Yeah. I mean, why Shrewsbury? Why Shrewsbury to start off with? Why?
Well, it was nearly in Cornwall, actually. Shrewsbury, because the town felt right. We've always, we live about 8 miles outside of town, but when family had come down to see us, we'd always taken them to Shrewsbury. It's a beautiful town for walking around in. I mean, the amount of independent shops is staggering for Shrewsbury. We know that Wyle Cop is reputed to be the longest run of independent shops in the country, and it's a really pretty town.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
And my bank manager made me check the demographics on wealthy achievers.
A spreadsheet again.
Yeah, a spreadsheet again. Yeah.
That's I love that though, because you're right. When it comes to diversity with independent shops.
Oh yeah.
You're winning here, and people do come into Shrewsbury for those specific items, I guess, for the independent shops, and to have a good rummage as well. There's a good diversity there,
Absolutely. I mean, people will go to a more traditional shopping centre, to go in. I am going in to go to Debenhams. Well, not anymore, you're not going to Debenhams, but...
Cheshire Oaks. You're going to go Cheshire Oaks?
You're going for something, whereas people in Shrewsbury, it's a day out for them. They'll come out, they'll have, they'll have a cup of coffee in the morning, have a bit of a mooch, bit of lunch. It's the whole package.
Kind of place, yeah.
It really is. It's pretty.
Yeah. Did you have a choice of what things you were going to specialise in, what you were going to sell, or was it always whiskey?
Well, like the website says, I think it was going to either be a campsite or a whiskey shop. But the wonderful thing was when I left under the guise of voluntary redundancy, so I was fortunate enough to have a bit of capital.
Okay.
There, and it's such a liberating feeling to be able to sit there and say, right, what am I going to do with my life next? And I remember clearly the day sitting at my sister-in-law's house. We were over there for lunch, and I thought, well, what about a whiskey shop? And the idea gains momentum then. And what starts as just a rather silly thing you say after too mto glasses of wine or whatever, it does gain momentum. And I went to see somebody at the bank, and went to see an accountant and a solicitor, and I gave myself, I think it was from the end of the October, about 5 years ago, actually 5 years ago this month, until Christmas to flesh out the plan. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that long to flesh out the plan. No, we had the company formed by mid-November. It was that quick. We didn't open the doors until end of March, but because you have to go through finding the right property, premises licensing, whole gamut of things that you need to do. But we literally went from nothing to having the company formed and having a plan 6 weeks, which was quite scary.
That's passion for you, though, isn't it? That you want this to happen, you're going to make it happen. Is that right?
Well, it is. There's what's that saying? If you do something you enjoy, you'll never work another day in your life. Whoever said that is a complete fibber, because you do work. When you own a business, and let's face it, there's been some challenging times recently that we're not going to talk about. We're being positive.
Yeah, we are.
But you've got to have the rough with the smooth. I always say, with a shop, your daily take is open to so many vagrancies that you can't possibly calculate out why it's been a good day or why it's been a bad day. But the one thing I always say, if we do have a quieter day, I always say, well, you can't have really good days without the really quiet days.
Yes.
You've got to have that pitch, if you like, between the two.
Yeah.
To understand when you're doing well.
There's lots to understand, and I guess it takes time to understand that, with a bit of experience, learning your demographic and learning the seasons and what people spend at what certain times of the year and stuff. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're almost 5 years into the actual operation of the shop, and every year's been a learning year. Every year will be a learning year in the future. I don't think you ever stop learning.
Especially not at the moment, no. There's lots of, discrepancies going on. I guess we can say lots of things happening.
Yeah.
But this is what I love a good challenge to do. And, you're talking about if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And you say, it is hard work to work on something to make, because I find that, and this isn't a shot at anybody that works for somebody. If somebody works for your company, right, and it's your company and your baby, no one's going to work as hard as you to make that happen, because the bills land on your doorstep. This is your baby. You created it, right? And that's what's going to cause a bit of, like, I don't know, not anxiety, that extra bit of passion. The worry, the drive to make sure it works.
Heck yeah! I mean, but one of the most affirming moments for me, I was talking to another shopkeeper on the Cop, who will remain not anonymous. They're a wonderful person. They've been trading for 30, 40 years. They're very much an old hand at it, and we were just chatting, and this person had the same worries that I had, and it's those day-to-day worries, and you think to yourself, well, if that person who's got this highly successful business is worrying about the same things that I'm worrying about, maybe what I'm worrying about, it's okay to worry about it.
Yeah.
I listened to an interview with James Dyson, and of course, hugely successful businessman. And the interviewer turned around and said to him, they were talking about his first vacuum cleaner and all the rest of it, and they said, well, what was it like when your company went from being in the red to being in the black? That must have been a wonderful moment. And he said, yeah, but that only happened last year. And you think, well, okay, so even the big boys, there's
constant uphill fight,
yeah.
But I mean, the worries and the drive and the anxieties and the problems that you have with running a business are what make. Yeah, it's the passion that drives it. That you wouldn't, if you didn't care, then you wouldn't.
They're more than swept away by the enjoyment.
Yeah,
the sheer joy of doing what you love.
And I have to say, your shop is a joy to walk in. I mean, Nigel at the top there.
He's a star.
Really nice guy. If you've ever walked past Whisky, I think the way I explained the Shrewsbury Biscuit to you and to Nigel at the beginning when I first asked you to come on the show, there's a phone. Sat in a working business, guys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I was going to say you can answer it if you like it. Was that if you've walked past Wrekin Whiskies a dozen times a month, what have you, and you've never thought of stepping in, maybe listening to the Shrewsbury Biscuit might tempt you to come and say hello, because even if you don't want to buy a bottle of whiskey or you just want to have a look, like, there's a very friendly shop to walk into.
We've always said we're up for a blether.
Yeah.
We always are. And we get, we've got an amazing collection of quite eclectic regulars. And they will, I can think of about at least 3 of them who don't drink. But they'll just come by and they'll spend 10 minutes passing the time of day and having a chat and, putting the world to rights or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. It's lovely because it gives you a sense that you're part of the community. And, and that grows with time.
I like that with the biscuit now, because there are people I've had on the show, people I've made friends with and stuff that I can just pop in and say hello. Like, I popped in a couple of weeks ago to say hello to Gaynor across the road in Victoria, and she wasn't in. I was like, hey, how dare she have a day off? What? Yeah. Because it is.
She never has a day off.
It's very rare because she loves what she does. And, you get a sense of community in the Cop here. Because I was speaking to Gaynor, we were doing these open studio sessions. We were speaking to 2 businesses at a time, sort of talking about the life through COVID, blah, 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 doing it virtually. And I was struggling to get a guest, and Gaynor was like, I know someone. And it was the girl from Cafe in the Cop, and she came and joined us.
Oh, Hannah.
Hannah. And we was chatting about antiques and cakes and stuff. It was fantastic.
Just stuff, yeah.
So is that what it's like here on the Cop?
It is. You can quite often. It was fantastic through the pandemic when the road was closed.
Oh, yeah.
If you had a quiet day, you'd often see a clump of people standing in the middle of the road, and it would be shopkeepers. There'd be 4 or 5 or so. Yeah, just chatting, just about anything and everything. And there is a sense of community. There always is. And it's exciting when you get somebody else brings their business to the community, to that community, and what are they bringing? How's it going to be different? And it's really fun. I'm so glad that there's other lovely places in town, of course, but I'm so glad that we chose to be where we are.
Yeah, it's a nice walk. I mean, a lot of people park at the bottom there and walk into town. It's good footfall, I imagine, all the time, constantly.
Well, there's a lovely walk, I always think, if you're visiting the town. And of course, you do Pride Hill, because Pride Hill is very much
centre.
It's the same. I'm struggling not to call it the High Street, because it's not the High Street, but it's what you would refer to as the generic High Street of the town. But then, coming down St Mary's and Dogpole, and then up Wyle Cop and the actual High Street. That little triangle is quite a nice little walk. It shows you Shrewsbury. It's different faces, if you like. And then, of course, you can peel off that to go further down the Cop or into Mardle or down towards... for some reason, we always end up as a travel agency, I think, here. I think it's because we've always got the door open and we've got a pile of the wonderful town maps, and people are always sticking their head in, how do I get to so-and-so?
Great incentive to get people in, though. I mean, where's St Mary's? Oh, yeah, it's over there. But whiskey drinker.
Well, we do. We point people towards the parade. We point them down towards the dingle with regularity. Down into the market. There's so much in this town. We've actually seen this year a behavioural, not change, but something we've never seen before, where people earlier in the summer, they'll come to Shrewsbury for a day, really enjoy themselves, and then we see them again about 6 or 7 weeks later for a weekend. And they
Shrewsbury sells, it really does.
It does, yeah.
I was talking to the guys at the Soldiers of Shropshire Museum up in the castle, and I was talking about, you can easily take just a section of Shrewsbury and spend the whole day there. So with the castle, you could go around the museum, really take your time and have a look. And then we've got the So Stories that we released with the Shrewsbury Bid, where they're like audio tours that you can listen to, and you can go do one of them as well. So you can do spend a whole day in the castle, take a picnic, you know what I mean, and then maybe go for a bite to eat afterwards. I don't know, it's just so many. There's loads of stuff going on at the prison. You can go and look at.
We did. My wife and I. Well, we weren't married then, but we were looking at wedding venues, and one of them was the potential of the castle.
The castle.
And it was only when we saw the room where they do the ceremony, which I found incredibly interesting. It was just surrounded by weapons on all sides. I'm a military history buff, and I was very excited. And she looked at it and went, "Do you think this is a way we should be starting off our marital life, surrounded by ways of maiming each other?" Went, "No, maybe not."
I think that's pretty cool, to be honest.
I was very excited.
What a great venue that would be. So when it comes to starting your business, obviously you've been training for 5 years now, and how easy was it to understand the stock and to what to sell? And because there's probably half a dozen, maybe even whiskies that you enjoy growing up and stuff, but then there's lots more to sell, isn't there?
Yeah, you've got to look at it. I wish that I could say that I'd only drunk a dozen whiskies growing up. You start off from the point of having a passion for something. In this case, it's whiskey, and knowing what's out there. You then have to make a decision about what kind of, in this case, whiskey shop we wanted to be. And for me, I class ourselves as an everyday whiskey shop. I know it says the specialist whiskey shop outside the door. That was a strapline that was invented for us by the guy, very talented guy who did all our branding. But I consider ourselves an everyday whiskey shop. If you wanted to go to a whiskey shop in London, for example, you would expect to find £2,000-3,000 bottles of wine, because maybe you are Prince whomever of wherever, and that's your boat. But,
whiskey.
Yes. But we're in a wonderful town, but it's a county town in a rural county. It's visited, but we wanted to have accessible whiskey that was good whiskey.
Yes.
We wanted to go off the beaten track. There are some myths in whiskey that could be busted about older being better, etc. But we won't go there. But it's but I remember bell curving it again. Spreadsheets. Working out where I thought that the majority of our stock needed to be looking at what I thought people's spending habits would be.
Okay.
And I was relatively accurate. And I think that kind of 40 to, we start lower than 40, of course, but I think that 40 to 60 range is probably where we sell 70% of our whiskies in that range.
Yeah.
And you'll get something fantastic in that range. You don't need to spend 150, 200 pounds unless you're looking for something really quite special,
Yeah.
But so you then look at your stock accordingly, and you look at your range accordingly. We were lucky enough to have a lot of help from a company called Gordon and MacPhail up in Elgin, who, apart from being fantastic independent bottlers, certainly at the time they were one of the best wholesale businesses for whiskey.
Okay.
And talking to them and really getting an idea of once I sat down and said, look, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to be as far as what we're selling. What would you advise? And and they said, there's no point in you putting a £2,000 bottle of whiskey in at the moment because it'll just sit there and gathering dust. Where
Been there 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you do get to a point where you can do those kind of things, and it becomes a pull for people. They come in. I remember I play guitar very badly, but I remember at one of the guitar shops in Birmingham, they had this fantastic guitar that had been featured on the front of Guitarist magazine. It was worth about £20,000 or £30,000 or something, and they had it right in the middle of their guitar wall. And nobody was ever going to buy this. It sat there for years, but you would come in to look at it, and then you'd walk out with a packet of strings or another lesser guitar or whatever.
And it does do that.
Yeah,
it does do that.
So maybe one day.
Whenever we go to the airport, I remember we always look for the most expensive bottle of whiskey and duty free, because they always have that one that's like £2,500 or something. You're like, oh my god, look at this, it's crazy, because it does get that high, doesn't it? It'll
go higher than that.
Oh yeah, of course, I bet. Yeah, I imagine.
I mean, the list we pick off, I think the most expensive thing on the list is about £24,000, which is like madness.
What makes a whiskey or a wine or a brandy or something so expensive? Is it the age, or is it just where it's made, how it's made?
I can't comment about why. We will leave that to the fine folks down at Tanner's.
Conspiracy?
No, because I know nothing about it, but I know how to drink it very well. But with whiskey, there's lots of factors. The biggest one, of course, is age. Age does increase the apparent price of whiskey, and that's because when whiskey goes in the cask, or when the spirit goes in the cask, can't call it whiskey until it's been in that cask for 3 years.
Okay.
But let's say whiskey loses 2 to 3% of its volume every year. Rather romantically called the angel's share, but there we go. So after 25 years, a cask is only about 40% full. So that's one of the big price drivers. The fact that
so it's limited.
And it's taking space up in a warehouse for that time. And
it reminds me of Kevin Spacey in Horrible Bosses, where he pours in the glass of whiskey, and he's like, I'm going to have a glass of whiskey. He's like, you going to have one with me? And he just gives him the glass of whiskey, and he's like, I don't drink, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, Nick. And he's like, it's an 18-year-old scotch, I'm not going to pour it back in the bottle. And he makes him drink this bottle of whiskey early in the morning. It's just brilliant.
Well, that's the breakfast whiskey.
Yes, really? No. I imagine. Oh gosh.
Although sometimes if Nigel and I were in on Saturday and we were trying new whiskies, we'd do it fairly early in the morning, because you're only taking a sip or two to be able to talk about something, especially if it's ahead of a tasting evening. But we do that early because I want to drive home at 5 o'clock and I don't want to upset West Mercia Constabulary. So like I say, you're only taking a couple of sips, but I want to leave that plenty of time to make sure. But we did have we had a young lady who worked for us, and she came in one day, and I must have had about 4 of them lined up. And like I say, I was just writing notes, taking a sip and writing notes. But the first thing she saw was these 4 whiskies. Oh my gosh, what's happened? What's wrong? Nothing.
Whose birthday is it?
Who's died?
I was very lucky enough to go on a podcast called Pints Unknown. A big shout out to Mike Gamboa, a great guy. And he basically, we get drinks, beers mainly, or ales. And we sip and we talk about them. What do they taste like? Well, that sort of squirting around your mouth.
lots of funny mouth noises.
Yeah, and it was really interesting actually because he was in America, I was in the UK, and it was like I was trying to get him to buy beer, so he went out and found out what beers he could buy in the US that I could buy in the UK.
All right,
so you sort of UK beers, like Guinness and stuff. It's quite cool. Have you seen any of these things online or anything with whiskey? Do people do whiskey tasting?
Online whiskey changes.
Podcasts and stuff.
It's the one thing that the pandemic has driven hugely is online whiskey tastings.
Yeah,
and some distilleries are prolific in their online whiskey tastings, and they're fantastic. Anything which introduces people to the product or increases their learning, or it's just plain fun.
Yeah,
it's a good thing.
I'd never been to a tasting of anything like that before until I went to one of Darren's at Gin Different.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. And I went to his gin tasting and stuff, and it was really fun. You do actually, he teaches you a lot, and I guess there's a lot to learn about whiskey as well. And I like the idea of them doing a whiskey tasting over Zoom or whatever with a load of people, and be like, "Well, you've got the whole bottle now. See you later, guys." Do you know what I mean? Like, I think some of the best nights that I remember are nights where I have sat with a friend and shared a bottle of Jura and just put the world to rights. Those are the nights that I absolutely adore. I started clubbing and stuff from a young age. It can really the novelty wore out very quickly. Yeah. Quiet drink with my mates is what I enjoy. Maybe I'm boring, I don't know, but that's what I enjoy.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
The crackling fire.
I'm going out tomorrow night in Bridgenorth with my brothers-in-law, and we 20 years ago, we would have been, come on, we'll hit Ironbridge for a few beers first, and then we'll do this. And we're like, we'll go see James Bond, then go for curry, that'll do us.
That was amazing, actually. That really does. I remember one year, we went out, we were like, I think it was a Sunday night, and we were, I grew up in Wrexham, okay, this is going to sound really odd, but Wrexham's a drinking town. You wanted to go out on a Sunday, there'd be clubs and bars open, right? So I just moved to Telford, I was like, let's go Ironbridge on a Sunday, it'll be absolutely fine, bars will be open, let's do it. Nothing was open.
Nothing.
We ended up in the Coalbrookdale Inn, and it was Domino's night. And it was me and 3 or 4 of our mates, and we sat there, and before we left, we knew everybody's name.
Fantastic.
Before we left. It was a great night. It really
Fantastic.
was. But those are nights you remember, aren't they? The nights where you really take your time with a bottle of whiskey and you really enjoy it. And is that like the majority of the people that come in, the bottle for the special occasion? The kind of
You'll get all sorts. You'll get... you will get some people who come in, and it's part of their regular...
Yeah.
Evening. Okay. Every evening before I go to bed,
like a monthly subscription to
every evening, but before I go to bed, and they're always really, 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 really old people. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've been having a little dram just before I go to bed. So is that a reason why you're 96 years old? I don't know. Or you'll get whiskey lovers in there come in, who are looking for something. You'll get collectors. You'll get all sorts. Young guys getting into it, girls who are into it. Last time I checked the numbers, something like 27% of confirmed whiskey drinkers were ladies, which is brilliant. Because
that's great, yeah.
Well, my sister can drink me under the table.
Now, there's a spike in like trends with drinks. Obviously, gin has just exploded. It's kind of. I was chatting to Nigel just. He was like, gin's sort of leveling out now. Rum is sort of growing.
Rum's growing a wee bit.
Yeah. Is whiskey just been like had a phase? Is it just at the high level as it always has been?
Whiskey is in boom at the moment, but the thing is, whiskey. When you talk from a UK economy perspective, whiskey is far bigger than the gin boom.
Yeah.
Far, far bigger, but it's consumed in a completely different way. For one, gin is consumed in the bars and clubs as well as at home. Whiskey tends to be at home, but also the gin boom was very much limited to the UK.
Yeah.
Whereas the whiskey boom that we're seeing at the moment is international. Whiskey is a far more international thing. I think the numbers were something like 3.5 billion for gin in 2019. I haven't seen the 2020 figures yet. Whereas whiskey was something like 4.9 billion.
But that'll be interesting though, the figures for 2020, because again, a lot of people were at home, and
I think gin got a lift.
Yeah,
because we were seeing through 2019, very allegorically, it felt like the excitement had gone out of gin.
Yeah,
it felt like there were too many gins on the market. We would get we get a lot of distillers come in and say, well, will we take their product? And the first thing you kind of want to ask them in a nice way is, well, how is your gin different? And we're not talking about, is it a nice
Palmer Violet flavour?
Yeah, well, exactly. What are you doing that nobody else is doing? And what's because you need a selling point. You need to be able to say, "Oh, this gin is, it's a wonderful gin. They're planting a tree for every 6 bottles, or the botanicals come from within a certain distance of a historical place, or whatever." But it felt in 2019 that it was just, in fact, looking at some of the trade press, it was just starting to plateau off, and then we all had to stay at home.
Yeah.
And I think it got a massive lift there.
It's become a bit of a problem, though. A lot of people did take up drinking during the lockdown, and then you have that mixed with the anxieties of going back to work. Now there's a lot of people that it's a huge thing. So I think we're going to be doing something with D4 drivers, about that soon. I'm in talks with them. So maybe it's across the board. Alcohol was just like give a bit of a boost, because what else is there to do, right?
Yeah, but it can be dangerous, and I think that's what you're alluding to, and it's one of the things that's really encouraged me over the years is we're so much more ready to talk about people's mental ill health.
Yes.
And of course, alcohol and the effects of alcohol play into that a little bit, especially if you use that to prop things up. And we found at home. Yeah, we drink probably more wine than anything else. So, contrary to popular belief, I do not drink a bottle of whiskey a night. But we found that pre-pandemic, we would have my wife and I would share a bottle of wine on a Friday night, probably on a Saturday, maybe on a Sunday. And then it became Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then it became, Thursday became Tuesday. And we were drinking a bottle of wine.
What day is it, darling? 1 o'clock. Yeah.
But, and it is something, now we've kind of reversed that a little bit. But I do worry about people who have, that anxiety.
Yeah. I'm going to be really weird and take some pictures of us while doing this. Yeah, it is something that concerns a lot of people, but I think there's a reach there now to get help to people.
Yeah,
and stuff,
the channels for help are so much better.
And what I get from your story is this is for people that know kind of. I don't want to sort of down.
Yeah, we don't use the C word.
The people that know what they're doing, though. The people that come in for a purpose and a reason.
Well, we talk about whiskey drinkers.
Yeah. This isn't an off license. This is a.
Well, technically it is. Yeah, a friend of mine calls it a very posh off license, but we're not. But there's nothing posh about us. But you're not. I did have to wrestle with my conscience as I was opening it, thinking, well, I know I had a stepsister who sadly passed away after being an alcoholic for many years, and you start thinking, am I facilitating? And that's something you have to kind of ask yourself, and then you very quickly say to yourself, well, look, people who will have a problem are not going to come in and buy a £40 bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
Generally, and you just have to look. And
you have to look at the point is, if you weren't going to do it, somebody else probably will. You know what I mean?
Well, there's
So if you can do it responsibly,
well, that's the key to it. That's the key to it. And anybody who's been in any of the alcohol trade, especially when you not only do your personal licensing and you understand where the law stands on various things, but your premises licensing, etc. That's what you fall back on, and ultimately you have to look at someone and say, maybe I'm not going to serve you because I don't think, for whatever reason.
Yeah, you've got to have that.
You've got to have that in you. Now, we've never had that problem.
No. Shrewsbury's great.
We've been lucky. I think in the first year we had the odd rather, I don't want to say the word drunk, but they were hammered. People coming in, and of course you just you become their best friend, and you move them gently out.
Mind the step.
Mind the step on the way out. We don't want confrontation. We just want it. But we've been broadly over the years. We've been very fortunate.
Yeah. I mean, it's you do offer a service to people, and you do it responsibly, and you guys are very friendly, nice people as well. So you're not gonna, for the listeners, you're not gonna come in here and be like, "What do you want?" This place is lovely. Nigel's really good. Even while I was waiting for you, we were just chatting about. See, I sort of. from me sitting down with my dad having a glass of whiskey when I was younger, I've kind of gravitated towards rum a little bit.
Oh, rums.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. And I feel like, we're talking about gimmicks and with sort of gins and rums and, the rise and things. I think sometimes people get bought in by the gimmick a little bit too much. I bought Dead Man's Fingers rum. And it's a nice bottle, big skull. I thought, this is going to be great. Legitimately tasted like PVA glue, right? Yeah. I finished the bottle because I bought it, right? But got bought in, sold by the skull on the bottle, simply because of that, So be careful, people, what you're buying.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of links in a little bit to something I was asked the other day. How do we compete with online sales?
But
the difference is we can talk to people, and we will. We do actually sell Dead Man's Fingers because that's what sometimes people want. But you need to have that conversation with people.
Sorry, Dead Man's Fingers. I'm sure
they're lovely people. They're wonderful.
Maybe
I
had a cold. Sure. I had a cold. It was just my taste receptors weren't working very well. So,
but you can have that conversation and say, well, it's a proposition for a particular thing. Whereas if you're wanting something a bit more of a sipping rum, you might go and look at this product or that product, and it's that ability to have that conversation,
yes, of
course, which makes any independent shop work.
Yes,
which is a good thing.
Yeah,
having a blether.
And there are people that do come in and buy like the a bottle of whiskey or something. But if someone was to come up to you and say, "Oh, I've got a wedding, I need a generally priced whiskey," can you?
Yeah, we do it all the time.
Yeah,
we do it all the time. We've done miniatures for favors, where we sit down with. I'm going to assume happy couple, and go through exactly what they want, and you end up with a list, and great auntie so and so only drinks this, but it's fine. We go off and do that. You get stag parties in. Looking for now that we sell cigars after Adlard's sadly went away.
I like a nice cigar. You sell cigars,
yeah, but we started after Adlard's shut. Yeah. But there's a whole thing there, and they're quite funny. The stag parties when they come in, when they're sober.
I want a cigar for me and the boys.
Yeah, quite funny. But you'll get the groom coming in and wishing to buy. Nice bottles of whiskey for his his ushers, best man, all of that kind of thing. So we try and keep life uncomplicated and try and help where we can.
I want to pop in for a cigar. I do like a nice cigar now and again.
Yeah,
it's very nice, and a bottle of whiskey. Yeah. Thank you so much for chatting to me today.
No,
honestly, we do this show because we like to learn about people's journeys, and you've had a great journey, and what you're doing I think is fantastic because you do offer a service, and you're very friendly people, and I just hope you guys go from strength to strength in the future. Have you got any plans to expand or anything, or is it just business as usual?
We're always trying to march forward. I mean, we've always done whiskey tastings, for example, but now our whiskey tastings are bigger.
Tell people about that.
Well, we do them every month, with the exception of December's the 1 month we don't do them because we're run off our feet.
Yeah,
but we used to do them in the shop, and we'd have 12 people, and we would do 5 or 6 whiskies and keep it fun. Informal lead tasting we call them. But the pandemic made us move into the Lion Hotel. A couple of doors down.
Oh, nice.
Where we can get a big room and have all these socially distanced tables.
What a great venue, yeah.
Yeah, we liked the ideas of having tables. So now we've got a bigger room, we do bigger tastings. We're looking, sometimes we do 2 a month. So expanding out that side. There's other areas we'd like to expand. The problem is sometimes space in the shop gets a bit full.
I've got to say, we're sat in the cellar, like I said at the beginning, and we had this idea. I was like, I need to do like a limited run of podcasts just called Shrewsbury Cellars.
Yeah,
I need to go down the Cop and do all the cellars. Do you guys get affected by the floods much? I mean, obviously,
no, we're quite lucky up here.
Yeah.
Although there is an artesian well I only discovered recently in the square. The square can get flooded. That's why there's when you talk about old Shrewsbury, that's why there's an old, what would you call it, guttering, if you like, that goes down to the river from there, and there's an artesian well that can spring up there. So when we have the dreadful floods, my heart goes out to anybody who was physically affected by them last year and the year before. And we're sitting there. Oh, we're on top of the hill. Nothing can possibly go wrong. Yeah. Although we did have our water pipe up there go the other week.
Yeah. But it affects people indirectly as well. So
Yeah.
you can't get up the carp, and it wasn't like that in 2019 when it happened was just devastating. I mean,
It was. To see. For us, we were lucky. It just affected our trade. We didn't have to worry about stock being ruined. We didn't have to worry about the business being underwater, anything like that. And it was just tragic for some people.
Yeah, it really was. Well, hopefully. Well, I mean, we're going to get these problems again. I'm not going to say, there's never going to be any floods, but I think what we need to do is I was chatting to Kerry from Bloom Studios in Colham, and I was talking about how maybe we can get something together where a step-by-step plan of what to do and what people might need and how people can help if there is a situation like this again. I don't know why we started talking about that as well. You're in Shrewsbury, we've got to talk about the floods, should I say.
Yeah.
I was chatting to Nigel. He said you guys are very active on social media.
Yeah.
How can people follow you? Where are you?
Instagram and Facebook are the two main. We've got a fledgling YouTube channel. Nigel's he likes doing a video. I do a video from time to time.
Cheeky videos.
He does cheeky little videos.
Yeah.
So we, like I say, they're always on Instagram, always on Facebook. So we started kind of lumping them into a YouTube channel as well.
Nice.
So it's not massively prolific.
Get some TikToks going.
I'll have to get my kids to show me how TikTok works. We dragged ourselves into the 20th century, I think.
Yes. Well, thank you for chatting to me today. And for the listeners, if you've walked past Wrekin Whiskies a few times and never stopped by to say hello, make sure you come say hello to these guys, because honestly, you'll enjoy speaking to them. I mean, it's a really pleasant place to come in and have a look. And if you need that bottle of whiskey, they'll help you out. So
absolutely.
I want to tell the listeners about our YouTube channel, actually, because we're starting to do something new. New but old. I'm going to be releasing vintage episodes of the Shrewsbury Biscuit on our YouTube channel. We've never really used YouTube to release our content, so it's very new, it's very fresh. So I'd love for you guys to go and subscribe. There are episodes there that you may not have listened to. Maybe you didn't listen to the Biscuit from the very beginning. Well, there's the opportunity to do so. We've got some great episodes to reshare. We're not going to share all of them. The ones I think people will enjoy. The first one was with author Simon Bell. We got one with Lorraine Fletcher and Stan Sedman from For the Love of Shrewsbury. Chris Shirk, who we were just talking about, is from Shrewsbury From Where You Are Not. These are great episodes that they've just sat on there on the bottom of the Podbean list and nobody's really listened to for a while. So give us a subscribe on YouTube, and you can also check us out on our website as well, which is the shrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk. All of our content is on there, and that's made for us by our friends at Web Orchard. You guys got a website as well. What's your website? It's really
what our website is flat at the moment.
Yeah,
it's normally wrekinwhiskies.com.
Yeah, give it a couple of weeks, guys, and check their website. It's really good. It's really good though. Thank you for chatting to me.
No worries.
It's been really nice. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.